Good evening, everyone. Chris Hansen here from New York City, and you are watching my YouTube channel and my show, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. Vincent Nicotra is helping out as always, my web producer.
Hello,
Tonight, we continue our investigation into the streamer Onision, Gregory Jackson, who has been accused of grooming, enticement, sexual misconduct, and involving himself along with his wife, Kai, otherwise known as Lainey, in inappropriate transmission of child porn, in essence. It's a case that is now under investigation by the FBI. It's a case we've been looking at for a number of weeks now. And tonight we have a very special and important guest, Ayalla, who joins us right now live here on the show. Ayalla, thank you for being with us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a very important interview, everybody, because Ayalla gives us a firsthand view of what it was like in the house in Washington State where Greg and Kai, aka Lainey, were living. She is very good friends, best friends, in fact, with Billy, who was on our show recently, talked about her relationship, how she was enticed to go to the house in Washington by Kai and seduced into a relationship with Greg as well. So the mind control, the cult-like environment, everything that went on, Ayalla saw because she was there. She was a concerned friend of Billy's, went out there being offered a job, I guess it would be fair to say, as a nanny. Tell us how you first got involved in this, how you first became aware of Onision, Greg Jackson, and Kai/Lainey in the first place. How old were you, and how did you even know about these folks?
Sure. So the first time I ever ran across Greg, I was in high school, and I watched some of his YouTube videos. But the first time I really had any contact was whenever Lainey had reached out to Billy, and they started a relationship with Billy. And eventually, whenever Greg became a part of that, essentially wedged his way into that. I eventually had conversations over email with Greg.
And what were those conversations? So you kind of became aware of him as a YouTube streamer. And what was there anything attractive about that, or anything you related to at that point? You were what, 17 years old?
I was about 15 actually when I first
started. And why was he relatable to you?
Well, he made a lot of videos about body image, and just he made videos about self-harm. And whenever I was a really young teen, those are sort of the things that I was looking up. So he kind of just made videos about all the things that young girls look up whenever they're sort of curious about themselves and growing into adults and everything like that.
And Billy was into it as well. How did she first tell you that, in fact, there was interest on the part of Kai or Lainey?
So Lainey had reached out to her on Twitter, I believe, and essentially asked if she was into women, and if she was interested in being in a relationship with her, just her, not Greg. And that's kind of how it started. And eventually they flew her up so that they could meet her and see if, her and Kai got along. To see if they could sort of build a relationship out of that. But it was pretty soon after she got there that Greg sort of implemented himself in that situation, because under everybody's understanding in the beginning, it was just going to be Billy and Kai
having a relationship, and then Greg started to get involved. Were you worried about Billy heading out there? Did you say, hey, I don't think this is a good idea?
Definitely. At first, I thought it was cool, of course, because they were these big YouTubers.
They were celebrities, basically, right?
Yeah. Greg has 6 million subscribers or something like that, and I thought it was really cool that she got to talk to somebody like that, because I had never really interacted with somebody with such a big following before. So I definitely, in the beginning, I thought it was kind of cool. But after the more and more they were. Once they officially got into a relationship and everything like that, that's whenever I started to get concerned, because I would see a lot of the controlling behavior. They asked Billy to quit her job so that they would have free access to fly her up whenever they wanted.
Quit her job.
Yeah, so she had a full-time job, and they essentially asked her to quit her job, so that they could fly her up whenever they wanted, because they weren't satisfied with the fact that they could not pick her schedule, essentially.
And how did you get lured into going out there, or did you basically go out there because you were worried about Billy?
So it was sort of a mix of things. So they wanted Billy to move out up to Washington State, and Billy was really hesitant to leave, every part of her whole life at home. So Greg actually offered to move me up with her and to pay me to be their nanny.
Did he use you to get Billy to move out there, do you think, looking back?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I feel like if I had never said that I would consider moving with her, then she probably would have never thought about moving at all.
Tell me about the time Greg Onision picked you and Billy up at the airport.
Yeah, so that was in October of 2016, and so they flew me out so that I could go meet them and see if like the whole dynamic would work of me moving up there as well. So me and Billy landed in Washington, and Greg, he picked us up in this really like scary Joker costume.
A Joker costume?
Yeah.
As in
and,
the
like,
Batman
really,
Joker?
Yeah, like the Batman Joker, and these really, really tall shoes. So he was like towering over us, and he really didn't say anything to me whenever we met. Like we made eye contact, but he was like pretty silent for like a good 20 minutes. Like he talked to Billy a little bit, but like it was like a really awkward like situation. And eventually,
did that strike you as strange? This guy shows up to pick you up in a Joker costume.
Yeah, it was definitely. It was really intimidating because like he is already pretty tall, but he was like wearing like big shoes, so he was just like really huge, and he was super silent and just like looked very serious. So I was like really intimidated by him at first when I first met him.
So you get in the car. What kind of a car does he have?
He's got a Tesla.
A Tesla.
Well, not anymore, but he had a Tesla at the time.
He did at the time.
Yeah, and so we drove back to the house, and that's whenever I was introduced to Kai and to Sarah, because Sarah was staying in the house at the time.
So Sarah, let me just back up a minute, who was on our program a few weeks ago, was also lured, enticed, groomed online at a young age, and then brought out by Greg and Kai to the home in Washington. She was 16 or so at the time, and they actually sought and got guardianship of her, and ultimately she got into a relationship with Greg and Kai.
Yeah.
So she's in this circle. So you're there, Billy's there, Sarah's there, Kai/Lainey is there. Mm-hmm. You've got one child. Kai is pregnant at the time with their second child?
Yes, Kai was pregnant whenever I was there.
And you've got Onision and Greg there. What kind of a household is this?
It was definitely very weird because like we were all so young. Even Kai compared to Greg is super.
You were 18 at the time, is that right?
I had just turned 19 about a month
turned
before.
19, and Billy's the same age as you.
Yes. Billy was 18.
And you find yourself isolated in this house.
Yeah, which was definitely intimidating because like the dynamic of the house was very weird. Like in the conversations, Greg would always like try to sort of point them in the direction he wanted them to go, or sort of like twist your words to like essentially make it seem like you were saying something else than what you were actually trying to say. So I definitely realized like pretty early on that he like used a lot of manipulation tactics, even just in his everyday conversations. So I tried to be pretty careful about the stuff that I said to him.
Give me an example. Would you all be sitting around, for instance, maybe playing video games, and then there would be a conversation, and was he trying to lure everybody into some sort of sex act, or how did that go?
So he would kind of just say more like suggestive things, or things that he would consider jokes, just like they were like things that were kind of provocative. But like if you ever called it out or like called him out on it, he was just like, oh, like I was just kidding, like essentially trying to play it off like he wasn't being like very suggestive in his wording. Was
he hitting on you?
Yeah, I don't think he wasn't ever directly hitting on me. I think the biggest thing that I would ever consider like the most direct thing is once I had said something about the fact that his relationship was a triangle, and he was like, "Oh no, it's really a square." And at the time, I didn't
Meaning
really
you were the fourth corner of it.
yeah. Well, see, at the time, I didn't realize if he was talking about me or if he was talking about Sarah, because there were only, two other girls there. And I really didn't say anything about it whenever he said it, because I didn't know if he was joking or if he, meant it was me. And I obviously was there with my best friend who they're in a relationship with. So I was just like essentially just backed away. I just left the room when he said that to me.
Billy basically started in all this as being in a relationship and kind of a let's see how it goes thing with Kai.
Yeah.
What was the relationship there?
Well, so Billy started dating Kai. Like they were in a romantic relationship. They were girlfriend and girlfriend at the time.
Even though Kai was married to Greg Onision.
Yeah. They decided that they wanted to be polyamorous, which just means like you bring in somebody else. But originally it was just supposed to be Billy and Kai. But Greg essentially like put out the idea that like he thought that he was getting something out of it. And so like that's sort of how that spiraled into what it became.
And what did it be? What did it become? How would you describe this?
Well, so what it was like they all were dating each other, but they had very weird issues, and they didn't really discuss their boundaries a lot. So it was really, really easy for Greg to sort of start fights in between Billy and Kai. That's something that he did a lot, where he would essentially tell Billy one thing or tell Kai something else. And then they wouldn't talk to each other. And that's something along those same lines happened with me and Billy, actually. I would have a conversation with Greg while he was editing videos or something. And then later on, I would talk to Billy. She would be like, "Oh, Greg said that you said this." And I was like, "No, it was actually, along the same lines, but he has like changed my wording so it comes off different." So that happened. He intentionally tried to miscommunicate, like to sort of switch to his essentially the narrative that he wanted.
He was grooming her. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely they took a very, very long time to sort of break Billy down and make her feel really, really bad about anything that she had done, even if it was, just the simplest things. And then it's like Kai and Greg both would start posting online about how Billy was terrible or she had done these things. So like she would feel humiliated. And this was even while they were dating. This didn't just start happening when they broke up, though he made so many videos when they broke up. But yeah.
Do you think, looking back, that he was and Kai was trying to break Billy down, break Sarah down, to a certain extent, break you down so they could control you in what sounds like a cult-like environment?
Absolutely. Yeah. They definitely Greg would pry for like private information about your mental health or abuse that you had suffered, things along those lines, to try to find your weak spots and sort of come at you. Like one time, like I am a singer, that's what I do. And he made me record a video with him and made me intentionally sing bad in the entire video because he knew that it would bother me.
So he could make fun of you.
Yeah.
So
just
this is all a control thing for him.
Right. Like he also found out that I am sometimes insecure about the way that I look. So when things blew up after we left, he made a video calling me ugly and all this stuff. He just tries to find the things that will really get under your skin, like specifically for each person.
For someone who was 18, 19 at the time, for someone who is, so immersed in social media, this digital space, who might be a little vulnerable finding themselves, give me a sense of how crushing it is for a celebrity like Greg to bash you, to beat you up verbally, to embarrass you on YouTube, Twitter, or any other platform? What does that do to a young woman like you?
To be honest, it crushed me. I had never had like so many people like come at me at once and like tell me like a whole bunch of terrible stuff about myself, which was all in all just not true. And this went on for years, which I think was like the harder part about it, because I was just a teenager and I had, he sent literally millions of people. He's got 6 million followers, to come tell me just all these terrible things. And he made videos about like, if somebody called, like sent the police to her house, like what would they find? Like, just a bunch of crazy stuff. Like I really just felt like I was being prosecuted. And it was just like, I was like, I didn't even do anything to them. Honestly, I just wanted to make sure that Billy was okay. And I feel like that was the craziest part, is I always tried to be really respectful. Even you can see in my emails to Greg, even when he, said I was, a scumbag and all of these other things, I still was very respectful in my emails to him, because I was doing my best to like not sort of perpetuate the problems. But
You
there
were
were
basically
so
there
many,
to keep.
I
You were
like
basically
eventually
there to
had
keep an
to
eye
say something
on.
about it.
You were basically there to keep an eye on Billy, right? I think we may have a frozen signal there. Hopefully we get it back. Ayalla, can you hear me? Ayalla?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
okay, good.
Because I like had seen over the course of is it good?
Yeah, we got you
Is
back.
it
Go
okay?
ahead. Yeah, you were basically there to watch over Billy.
I can
Right?
hear
Yeah, I got you.
you. Yeah. Like one of the first interactions I ever had with Greg was just sending out an email of concern. And so a lot of the reason why I went out there, not only to see like if I could move out there possibly, was to essentially meet the people who had been doing this to my friend for so long, because I had a lot of concerns about it before I went there, but I tried to go there with an open mind to be like, maybe these people are nice in real life. Maybe I, have judged them too early, just to see what was going on. But it was like not very long after getting into the house where I was like, no, like something's definitely wrong here.
Start to finish, how long were you there with Billy at Greg and Kai's home in
So
Washington?
we were supposed to be there for an entire week. I think it was maybe 10 days. But we left early. We left 3 days before our flight, and stayed with some of my friends in Seattle.
And was there one thing that happened that made you say to Billy, we got to get out of here? This is wrong, potentially dangerous.
So it was after, I think it was the day after, like Greg had coerced Billy into sleeping with him, even though she very evidently told him that she was uncomfortable with it. And she came upstairs just absolutely bawling in tears. But after that happened, essentially everybody in the whole house just started attacking Billy, and like they were like getting in screaming fights. So Greg like sat us all down and had us sign a contract, essentially agreeing to stay for another week.
Sign a contract?
Yeah. He like typed up this contract essentially saying that like we agreed to stay for a week. We agreed to like try to work things out and like keep the peace in the house and be nice to everybody. And there were a few more things, like just like little snippet rules, but I can't remember all of them.
This is important, and I want you to tell me in detail, when Greg allegedly seduced Billy, she would come to you afterwards, very distraught, very upset. Tell me exactly what she said and what she told you Greg did to her.
Well, so she told me that when they were hanging out downstairs, he essentially suggested that they should sleep together without Lainey. And she came up to me and she was like I tried to tell him more than a couple times that I was uncomfortable with it and that Lainey would be uncomfortable with it. And I think it's a really bad idea. But he just kept pushing and pushing. And something that Lainey has admitted, Kai has admitted himself, is that Greg is somebody who's really, really hard to say no to, because he will just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, or sort of changing the way that he asks until you cave.
Did Billy tell Greg no?
She didn't say word for word, like no. She didn't say the word no, but she tried to say it in other ways. And I think that is sort of the thing that like is missed, is like she really did put an effort not to do that day, and she would not have come up to me looking so distraught and in tears if that's something that she had actively sought out on her own, which is the way that she was portrayed afterwards.
Is this sexual misconduct on Greg's part?
Absolutely. There's no question. Since that day, which was really one of the biggest red flags, it was definitely huge, but like that day I was just like really concerned about what else, was going on whenever people weren't there, because like that's whenever everybody was home. That's when his wife was in the house, and I was there and Sarah was there, and these are still the things that he can get away with, even in close proximity to people who like would see it and realize that that's not okay.
What was it that made you finally say, Billy, we got to get out of here?
Okay, so after the contract that we signed, it was the next day, and the whole house was very tense because of all of the issues going on. And Greg took Billy and took her into the garage by herself when like Kai was crying in the other room, because poor Kai was very upset about the things that Greg had done. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But he isolated Billy in this room and was trying to convince her to get a tattoo.
Tattoo?
He was asking Billy to get Lily tattooed on her, which was their ship name. So Billy and Lainey together would have been Lily. But he was trying to convince her to get a tattoo to prove herself and prove that she loved them and she wanted to stay. And they had been in there for maybe 20 minutes. But I realized that, Billy was clearly just like by herself with Greg somewhere, because I could find everyone else in the house. So I went into the garage, and he started trying to use me to convince her, like talking to me, being like, oh, well, don't you think that this is a good idea? And don't you think that she should do these things to prove that she's really in love with us? And I was very much like, no, that's a terrible idea. I don't think that she should do that. Like, I'm not on your side on this one. It's definitely a terrible idea. And he was pretty frustrated that I did not agree with him. But eventually, like later that night, like things just got more and more intense. The tensions were very high. And after what I saw Billy go through, and after the contracts and him trying to force her to get a tattoo, I was just like, hey, Billy, like we really need to get out of here.
So let's just back up just one second, because this tattoo thing, it sounds like such a control move.
Yeah, it definitely is. He himself once got a tattoo for an ex, and that's why he was using that as an example. Like, I went and I got a tattoo once, so you should do this too, because it's a great idea and it really like saves your relationship, even though he wasn't in that relationship anymore, so it wasn't a very good example. But it was very like the language that he used was very manipulative, and he was trying to essentially just make her feel like she had done something so wrong that she needed to do this big extravagant act to essentially regain trust, which
control,
I don't know why
really.
Yeah, definitely. It's also part of like branding. I think that that's just a thing that he, wants to be stuck on your skin forever. Like,
and do you think that Billy was afraid to turn Greg down even though she tried initially to say no. Do you think she was afraid to totally run away because of how he'd react?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime that she had done something even remotely against what they asked, she would be privately and publicly humiliated and torn down for it. So I think in a lot of ways, he just had so much control over the way that people saw her and the way that she saw herself that saying no to him in a lot of ways really just wasn't an option. Because if you didn't do the things that he wanted or didn't live up to his standard, he was going to make you a villain.
And was Kai in on this? Do you think that she was aware the whole time of what Greg was doing?
I truly think that she was, but I believe that Kai himself went through a lot of the same probably abuse tactics. So, when you go through abuse enough times, it feels normal. So I think that maybe it was just because he had been through it so long that he just didn't understand that those aren't things that you're supposed to do.
It seems like, and there have been cases of this, throughout criminal history, that they were working together as a team to get Billy, manipulate her, use her for sex, then exploit her. They did the same thing with Sarah, ultimately with Shiloh, to a certain extent with you being there. All these young women. And we don't even know how many there are out there. I mean, we've interviewed, a half a dozen.
Yeah.
All
and those
with
are just
the
the
same
people who
basic story, a harrowing story. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there truly could be countless others, because I know even for me, I wasn't even in a relationship with them, but the amount of power and sort of media attention that he would get whenever he made these terrible videos, I was scared to say something for a long time, because after I left the house, he made over 15 videos with my face or my name in them, saying terrible things about me or talking about different parts of my life. And it was really terrifying. I did not want to say something and have, another string of videos be put up. So I definitely understand why there are girls who don't want to come forward and say anything, because it gets scary to have so many people watching and, reading the things that he says about you, no matter how false they are. Yeah.
There were other threats too. Didn't he at one point threaten? I know he did this with at least one or two of the young women, chaining them into the basement.
Yeah. So part of after we had left, Greg decided that Billy needed to earn her spot back, essentially.
Earn her spot back after all this trauma.
Yeah.
After all this sexual misconduct, grooming, cult-like behavior.
Yeah.
He says to her, you need to earn your spot back?
Essentially, yeah. He said you need to prove yourself. So he asked Billy to shave her head. He asked Billy to dye all of her hair green and get a fake tan, to completely remove her eyebrows, and also to chain her up in the basement for a week. And that's something that he brings up frequently, because she blatantly said absolutely not to all of these requests. And then he would shame her and be like, oh, you're boring and I can't believe you don't want to do this. And just essentially make her feel really bad about the fact that she wasn't even willing to do those things. They also asked her to make a public apology video, to be like, it was really all my fault, so that they could essentially publicly humiliate her more. But there was a long list of things that they tried to get her to do. They also tried to get her to tattoo "I'm a liar" on her. On her lower back, they wanted her to tattoo "I'm a liar."
Who does this stuff?
Crazy people, to be honest. I truthfully have never seen somebody try to force someone to do such crazy things. Oh, another thing that he tried to do was have her move to Washington State and not talk to anybody that she knew anymore, like me or her family, no one.
Just to isolate her.
Yeah, he was aiming for complete and total isolation. He asked her to move out there and not talk to a single person that she knew for an entire year.
Now, little Sarah is living in the house at the same time,
Hmm.
and they're manipulating her as well.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
definitely, with Billy and Sarah, they would have them like caring for their kids and cleaning things, and essentially um, using them as like their what's it called? Their maid or their nanny and all of those things. But they would, if they didn't do those things, like if Sarah was not watching the kids up to par, like they would threaten to send her home, or they would, just like threaten little things, like take things away from her. So if she didn't like take care of their kids, then she would be punished or threatened to have something bad happen.
When did she have the second child? Was that after you guys left? I'm talking about Kai now.
Yes.
So you were there, she was pregnant, they had a baby already.
Yes.
Was that any kind of an environment for a child?
Honestly, no. I just feel like they like they pay people to take care of their kids, so I can't say that they're neglected. But it's definitely not a great situation for kids to be in, especially to have so many different people that they don't know coming in and out of the house, and obviously being involved with their parents in front of them. It's definitely like a super weird dynamic.
They actually made Sarah do an apology video, didn't they?
Yeah. Whenever I spoke out at the beginning of this year saying that I suspected them of grooming because of some of the things that Sarah had said to me in the house when I was there, I essentially made a video detailing what I thought, well, what I knew, and the conclusions that I could draw from what I already knew. And after that, Greg forced Sarah to make a video essentially saying that they had really never done any of those things, and that they were innocent of it, to try to disprove what I was saying, even though, as you have seen and you talked to Sarah, you know now that it turned out that it was all true.
So you and Billy are in the position where you've basically got to sneak out of this house without Greg knowing about it.
Yep.
So you mount a secret operation of packing and you come up with an exit strategy.
Yep. Yeah.
Why couldn't you just go to Greg and say, look, this didn't work out. We're out of here. I'm done.
To be honest, we were just scared of the confrontation. He was very manipulative, and he had already tried to get us to sign a contract to stay longer, and he was doing all of these things to try to essentially make it feel like we shouldn't leave or we couldn't leave. And like when we were in the house, like we essentially like they always knew like where we were. They were keeping up with us. Like I think me and Billy left the house only one time. Like the entire duration that we were there without somebody like with us.
So you come up with this plan. What did it entail? How were you going to get out of there?
So,
And did you think if he caught you, he could hurt you?
to be honest, I was scared about what would happen if he found us sneaking out. But what happened I talked to Billy and I was like, hey, like, we really should get out of here. Like, can we go? Like, are you ready? Like, I see all of these signs. Here they are. Like, please, let's leave. And finally, we packed our bags completely silently. We snuck into where all of our stuff was, and we packed our bags. And we ordered an Uber. But we heard somebody coming, so we canceled the Uber probably 3 or 4 times because we were trying to be secretive about it. We wanted to get out of here.
So you actually ordered and canceled Ubers 3 or 4 times because you were afraid of getting caught by Greg.
Right. Yeah. So we were trying to get out and like just essentially just avoid the confrontation because he will really just twist the situation and make you feel terrible about it. And I knew better than to stay there at that point. It was like way over my head. Like I was definitely in over my head. I realized Billy was not in a place where she needed to be. And, but we just wanted to, cut the cord and just get out of there. So we, packed our bags, but we canceled the Uber 3 or 4 times. And then we finally like got the Uber, and it was quiet in the house, so we figured that we were okay. And we started walking out the door, and Greg caught us walking out the
He
door.
caught you.
Yeah, he
And
saw
what did
us,
he
and
say when he caught up to you?
He really was just talking to Billy mostly. He's like, wow, you guys are really trying to leave right now. How could you do this? And how is Lainey going to feel? And how could you do this to us? And I thought you loved us. And all of this different stuff. And he sent Billy over to Kai because Kai was crying in the other room. And we, so she went in to see Kai and gave her a hug goodbye. And then she came back out, and Greg just started pushing and prying and be like, well, you can stay and Ayalla can go. And essentially just being like, well, like, we can work things out with you, and your friend doesn't need to be here. Like, we could still make this work.
Was he trying to separate you two? It sounds like he was trying to,
right.
He didn't mind you leaving. He just wanted to keep Billy
right.
there.
He wanted to get me out of the picture because I saw through what he was doing. And I mean, it makes sense if somebody, sees through all the pieces, you don't want them there. But what I did is whenever he started essentially berating Billy to stay, I just took her bags and I started walking them down to the car so that she did not have the opportunity to stay because I knew for a fact that she needed to get out of there no matter what Greg had to say, or Kai for that matter. And so I took the bags down to the Uber, and she was walking maybe 10 paces behind me, and Greg followed us out to the Uber, still trying to get Billy to stay. But I eventually like got the bags into the car, and I was like, okay, Billy, like, we really got to go. And she hopped in the car, and we drove to my friend's house. So that's how we got out.
And what were Greg's last words, if you recall?
I think it was just, how could you do this?
How could you do this after he abused the both of you?
Right. Yeah. He was just in awe, I think, that somebody really wanted out. I don't think that that's something that he has experienced because he's so used to gaining such a control over people that they either can't get out or they feel like they don't want to.
And where is Kai during all this when this all goes down?
Crying.
Just crying. Does Kai say anything to you or to Billy?
No. She was pretty much just he was pretty much just curled up on a bunk bed, just very, like, I don't know, isolated.
Give me a sense of your relief as that car drove away from Greg and Kai's home.
Honestly, I felt the biggest weight off my shoulders. I just feel like in that house the entire time I felt like there were eyes on me and people like picking apart everything I said, and just like it was such a relief to just not have like the weight of somebody so domineering just like watching over everything that you do. Because Greg had said while I was there and since then that he has cameras all over his house. And Billy multiple times, even whenever she would come home from trips there, she'd be like, I feel like he's filming me. Even whenever like I'm just around, like I feel like there are cameras in this house recording me. So like that was just another thing, like, because he could have been filming any number of things in that house, who really knows. But it was really just such a relief. And
what did Billy say to you as you drove away?
To be honest, I don't know. It was very late at night, so we were super exhausted. I know that she was glad that we left. And it was the first time that she had been there for months and months altogether. But it was the first time that she got to like actually see the city and like walk around and do things. So like she, finally felt like she was actually like out and having fun, and like it was freeing for her because the entire time that she spent with them, she was either in the house or out with somebody. Like she just never got to like she spent most of her days just locked in a house with them.
She was captive.
Right, exactly. And so I think that there was just like a lot of relief, like whenever we got out, because we finally got to even see the area that we were in. Like, it was so isolating that we didn't even really, other than like a yogurt shop and a Target, we didn't go anywhere.
Now, tell me about this contract he tried to get you guys to sign when you were making noise about leaving. Who does, I mean, how does he even come up with the fact that he could manipulate you? I mean, I get you're 18, 19 at the time, and you're still kids, right? I mean, you may be of the legal age of consent to go do and live and, you know, hang with whomever you want, but you're kids.
Yeah,
right?
I definitely, at the time, I thought I knew everything. And looking back, even just 3 years ago, I'm absolutely, like, I was super young and naive, and I'm glad that I caught on to as much as I did. But yeah, so the contract, yeah, it was super weird, but he just essentially, he said that he wanted to get everyone on the same page, and he wanted to find a way that we could stay, because Kai wanted Billy gone. And Greg was like pushing and pushing and pushing to have her stay and work things out, because, you know, Greg was pushy. And so he typed up this contract, essentially like making us agree to stay for another week, and pushing back the flights. And we had to, there was this thing in the contract where, like, if you wanted to like have a conversation with somebody about something, like, you had to make them tea first. Like, you couldn't just sit down and talk to them. Like, really just weird things, but like, you had to agree to be nice. Like, you had to agree not to curse.
And all this sounds very manipulative. Like, again, it sounds like David Koresh in Waco, or, you know, this Nexium cult case that was just, you know, on trial in upstate New York. They all follow a pattern.
It was definitely, I feel like it was just the intimidation factor, and also getting us to sign something if, you know, we didn't do those things, you know, to a T the way that he had written them. It was also just another way where he could be like, well, like in his public forums, to be like, well, they agreed to do this, but they didn't, because I think that a lot of what he does is sort of just gathering information or data, or just like random bits and pieces, like everything that's wrong with you, so he can use it against you later. He sort of makes a backup file just in case things don't work out the way that he wanted them.
And in your 19-year-old mind, did you think that contract was in any way legally binding, or was this just another psychological trick tool to keep you?
I personally knew that it wasn't legally binding, but I have spent a lot of time with legal paperwork in my lifetime, because my parents are divorced, so there was a lot of different like contracts and things like that were placed in front of me and sort of explained. So I knew at the time that it wasn't legally binding, but I definitely understood that it was an intimidation factor. And not to say that that wasn't effective, because he was an intimidating man. So yeah, definitely.
You leave there. Go ahead. Okay. You leave there. You weren't supposed to go for a few more days, or at least your flight that he paid for was not for a few more days. So you really were fortunate in that you had friends in Seattle where you could go stay. It's not like you had a credit card where you could go get a room at a fancy hotel in downtown Seattle. This guy and Kai owned you, basically, and Billy.
Yeah.
You didn't have a bunch of money. You didn't have, I mean, thankfully you were able to even get an Uber to get out of the place.
Yeah. Actually, my friend Shibby's the one who bought the Uber, I believe.
How much money did you have in your pocket when you were at that house when you left?
Like $50 maybe.
$50.
Yeah, it was nothing.
Billy?
I believe she had money on a card, but I'm not sure. It wasn't much. We really were not.
Right. I mean, so maybe you had maybe you had $100 between you, and you're trapped in this house
on the other side of the country from where we live.
On the other side of the country, no family, no friends. Thankfully, you did have ultimately friends live nearby.
Yeah.
How did you explain this to your friends when you got to their place in Seattle? Were they freaked out by it all?
A little bit, yeah. But they were super just welcoming and nice about the whole thing. Like they didn't pry too much. They essentially just opened the doors to us and were like, if you need a place to stay, we have it for you. We have got food. Just like come hang out, and just don't deal with that anymore. But one of my friends that I stayed with actually knew who Onision was from YouTube, not in the context that we knew him, obviously, but she was aware of who he was and why we were in town. Um, so
Were you guys a bit starstruck by Onision?
Yeah. Originally, yeah, I definitely thought that it was cool because I had never really interacted with somebody with such a big following. And I watched his videos when I was younger, and so there definitely was a little bit of like a shock value to meeting him because I had seen him on the internet and on these channels, and even like just I thought it was cool in the beginning, but there's only so much that fame can make up for, and abusing young women is not something that you get a pass on just because you have some people who watch your YouTube videos.
Now, Kai, did she try to convince Billy to stay? Did she have a conversation? Did he? We just to back up a minute. I think most people know this, but Kai is transgender, so the proper pronoun is he, even though Kai is the wife and childbearer in the
relationship. I'm sorry if I messed that up.
No, you're fine. I just want to be, I'm trying to be sensitive to the everything that's all the moving parts here. But did Kai come to you or to Billy and say stay or go, or what was Kai up to during all that?
So after what Greg had done to Billy, Kai essentially wanted us to leave.
And why did Kai want you guys to leave?
Because she took Greg's word for it essentially and blamed Billy for the whole thing, and just decided that she was really the antagonizer of the entire situation that they were in.
So Greg blames Billy for their intimacy, claiming that Billy lured Greg into this.
Essentially, yeah.
And he sells that to Kai. And then Kai, whether faking it or sincerely, says, you got to go because I'm upset that you weren't my girlfriend. You were also my husband's girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, that's
how screwed up is that?
That's actually something that he has done with a lot of the girls. Like if, he does something and he gets caught for doing something bad, he'll just blame the other person. Like he did that with me. He's done the same thing with Sarah, and he did it with Billy in 3 different instances. But I actually have emails from him, and even in quotes from Greg, he says it's really easy to make it look like the other person did nothing but wrong. So he is very aware that like it's easy to make people look bad, and if you need to do that, you can.
Do you think Kai really loved Greg? Or was this just all an act and part of a circus, essentially, to bring in viewers and make a ton of money on social media?
I think that Kai started off as a super fan, and her, like I thought it was cool that Greg had, a big YouTube channel in the beginning. But I think for Kai, like she was such a big fan that whenever they met, she was even past starstruck. Like she just threw herself into it. And I think it was more of like a fan obsession than love itself. But he was so young at the time that I think that I guess in some ways it could have developed into love, but it's hard for me to say that that's truly what it is. Whenever they interacted, it doesn't seem like a very loving relationship. They're quite standoffish to each other, actually. But
do you think Kai was afraid to be alone with Greg? And that was part of why the seduction occurred, why this grooming, luring, enticement took place for her to get somebody else in that house?
I absolutely believe that because, like, if Sarah or Billy weren't there, she also had another friend who would come in and stay in the house, who was their nanny. I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but there was very few times where he had like opted to just be alone with Greg. Um, And even at some points, I don't know if Billy mentioned this in her broadcast, but Kai at one point broke down crying in front of Billy, saying that she was very concerned about the well-being of her daughter because, who had not been born yet when we were there, because of the way that Greg treats women. And I don't know if Billy said that in the broadcast, though she can corroborate the quote if needed. But there's definitely concern there, like, Kai herself has voiced concerns about the way that Greg treats women. So I think that a lot of it could just be that he was scared to go through it alone.
You get out of there with Billy. Sarah stays behind. Did you worry about that?
Yeah. Because whenever I was there, Greg would make inappropriate comments to Sarah, and Sarah would just come up and talk to me about it. Like one time he whispered "that booty though" to her, and she was only 16 at the time. So he was making provocative comments to Sarah, even while we were there. And me and Sarah sat down once while I was there and had a really long conversation about how her and Kai used to talk about dating and about how they had feelings for each other. And she had sort of hinted that there was more to it, more explicit things that they had talked about, though she never outright said it at the time because she seemed really scared to. So I was a little scared about leaving her there. I actually reached out to Sarah after we left because my own mother is a foster mother. And I was like, hey, I know that these people say that they're trying to take care of you, but like if you want a real foster home, like we have already been checked out by the state, like they're registered like in the system to be foster parents. Like if you need somewhere to go, like there is a place for you. Like if you can't go home and you don't feel safe there, like there are options essentially. So I clearly was concerned because I reached out and I said, if you need a way out, there is one.
How much damage did Greg, Onision, Kai / Lainey do to your friend Billy?
A lot. To be honest, there was lasting damage. Like Billy got crazy anxiety. Before she was with Greg and Kai, she used to be just really into going out all the time and meeting new people. And she was like very energetic. And after that, she became very, very isolated because in their relationship, they weren't really comfortable with her going out, or whenever she would hang out with people, they would make her feel really bad about it. And so it really sort of took a toll on her in a way that I don't know that she has recovered from, because it was a very traumatic experience for her. And I'm sure you could have seen even in your broadcast with her that even when she's talking to me about the things that happened to her, she can, get through one point or maybe two, and then like her mind essentially just gets scattered because she has flashbacks.
She did an amazing and compelling job on this show telling her story. You saw it. And just as I will say to you, I say to everybody who comes on this show, this isn't about trying to embarrass somebody or to exploit some sort of relationship or judge the decision to go out there. That's not what this is about. People get lured into situations at vulnerable times in their lives. And at least Billy had you to drag her out of there.
Yeah.
What do you think would have happened if you hadn't been there?
I would like to think that eventually she would have seen through it. But Billy, she's very loving and she's really sweet and she really puts a lot into her relationships. So I think that it probably would have gone further and gotten worse before she got herself out of it, because she is so willing to, put in effort for people that she cares about. And if you make somebody who's already willing to give you everything, to essentially make them feel like they need more, like she would have just drained herself for them.
What strikes me, and what I think all of you have in common, is that you're strong and you're brave, and you got out of this situation, and you're able to talk about it as a cautionary warning to other people who may fall prey to Greg and Kai, and to so many other potential situations that exist online. We've seen, Alex Jones online. We've seen all these other cases where, young, impressionable, vulnerable girls, and in some cases guys, get lured into these situations, and these people get, whether they're evil and they go into it to exploit their evil, or whether they can't handle the fame and attention of it all and they take advantage of young fans. It happens over and over again. But on the topic of that strength, and yours specifically, you got out of there, you got back, he was still attacking you.
Yep, for a long time.
And what kinds of things was he saying about you, and how did he say them?
Well, he made a video about how I was anorexic and starving myself, which is not true. About how I was really ugly and disgusting. He made a video about how I'm a drug addict and a criminal. He made a whole video about how it was actually me who was trying to pursue Sarah and not him. He made really just countless videos. He made, I think, 6 or 7 videos about the fact that my boyfriend cheated on me, just so I had to relive all the stuff that I went through with that. He would just constantly just like put my name or my tweets, my face, like in his videos, just to constantly sort of bring it up. And he, even like years after I had left, like the last time I received an email from Greg was in September of this year. But he would like reach out to me even over time after I had left the house, essentially asking me for more personal information about myself so that he could like put it in his videos about me. Even though I have countless emails of me asking him to stop using my name and stop using, my face, and just to essentially leave me out of his content and to stop contacting me. And there's even a video on my YouTube channel that says my last cease and desist to Onision, which I put up years ago. And I still, at the beginning of this year, he was making videos about me. And even as recently as September, he was reaching out to me. So it has been years and years, and he still has not stopped.
You have some of those videos. I'm sorry. You have some of those emails with you.
Yes, I do.
Right now. Read me one that you think is very telling about who Greg Jackson Onision really is.
Okay. I screenshotted some of the quotes here. Like in the beginning, like before I got to the house, this one just says, "Well, I'm glad you're like this. You're a good friend to contact me and express your concern." And yeah, that was in September 2016. And as early as, or as soon as January, he was in these emails. Sorry, he said he was calling us morons. He said, "You two are morons. Go about your shitty liar backstabbing user day. Yeah, if you two fucking idiots didn't want people to know you're criminals, stop doing dishonest, dumb shit."
So he's calling you in these emails criminals?
Yeah.
Accusing you of being dishonest?
Mm-hmm.
Dumb?
I think there's one in here I wanted to read. I'm sorry, I'm looking for it. Yeah, there's this one. It says, "You enable Billy. She's a beautiful girl with a future, and you're an ugly piece of shit who drags her down." And these were all in quick succession because the first emails where he was like, "You're a very good friend and it's good you're expressing your concerns," was right before we went up to Washington, and all of those emails I just read were right after we left.
So
So
he's
he
getting you
flipped
to
pretty
buy
quickly.
into this and trying to be your friend on the way in. And once you do the right thing and get your girl Billy out of there, he's attacking you.
Right.
And these attacks went on for years, both in email and in the vicious videos he produced.
And in phone calls. He has
And in
also
phone
called
calls.
me multiple times.
Who does this sort of thing?
I don't know. It's just people who need help. Really.
What is his motivation? Is he just evil? Is he
I think he's sick, truthfully. I think he might be a psychopath, just somebody who does not understand or relate to like the horrible feelings that he puts on other people. Because I just feel like there's no way that you could live with yourself if you had a conscience and you were doing all of these things. Like, he tries very hard to rationalize, but there is no way to rationalize the kind of abuse that he puts these women through. I just feel like he genuinely has to be sick.
If you could say anything to Kai right now, what would it be?
You know, you did bad things too, but there's always a way out. You don't have to stay there. You know, you made some bad choices and you should be held accountable for those, but you don't have to stay with this man who abuses you. That's truthfully, you just don't.
And what do you say to Greg?
Stop. Just stop. Like, I don't even leave all the girls alone. Leave me alone. Just stop hurting people.
What should happen to Greg?
Truthfully, I feel like they should both be held legally accountable for the things that they have done. I feel like you can't consistently abuse women for a decade and have nothing happen to you. It would be insane if that was, you know, acceptable, and it's just not.
Should he be allowed to have a platform on YouTube where we are
No.
speaking right now?
Absolutely not. I feel like that is the reason why he was able to manipulate and prey on all these girls, and he should definitely be deplatformed, because there is no reason that he should have access to all those young girls.
And what does it say about YouTube that it has not deplatformed or been more aggressive with Onision, Greg Jackson?
I think that they just don't pay attention or they don't care. Because whenever things like Austin Jones came out, they, you know, let him keep his platform until he went to jail. So essentially any number of things you can do on YouTube and they won't take them down unless it's, you know, for their benefit specifically.
Now, Greg has been deplatformed on Patreon, which is arguably a less restrictive, I don't know, wilder is the best way to put it, but it certainly is more of the wild, wild west, I think, when it comes to social media platforms.
Yeah.
Patreon took him down. What does it say about YouTube?
They're just very irresponsible. I feel like they will take down, you know, LGBTQ videos, but they can't take down, you know, videos of an actual predator who is abusing young women. I think it says a lot about them, but all the wrong things.
What do you say? And again, you're smart, you're brave, you're articulate, as is every one of the young women who has appeared on this show and told their cautionary tale. But what do you say to other young women who are out there who are afraid of Gregory Jackson and what he might do to them, and maybe have not come forward to tell their stories so far? What do you tell them?
I would say stand your ground. If you have gone through something with him, it's okay to say something. I know it's terrifying. And if you have never met him, stay as far away from him as you possibly can. Don't trust him. Like Haley said in her broadcast, they're not who you think they are. And that's absolutely true. Yeah, just steer clear, because it may seem fun and cool because he's got a following, but it is a nightmare, and it's not one that you want to live through.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from all this?
Well, to be honest, really the biggest lesson I learned was I got to evaluate a lot of new manipulation tactics that I hadn't seen before. So really, I just learned more red flags to see, because a lot of red flags that I saw, I noticed some of them, but I didn't notice all of them. So I think that I just got a better perspective of what people like this, like the ways that they try to do these things. So that's really the biggest lesson I learned, was how to spot stuff like this. Even more so.
And how has this shaped you, impacted you in terms of your own relationships?
I'm very careful. I try not to date people who are too much older than me now. To be honest, I try to keep it in my age range, because I see that generally does not fit very well. Especially whenever I was younger. I guess it's a little different now because I'm in my early 20s, but and also just to be careful, and when people show you who they are, believe them the first time.
Is there anything else you want people to know?
I can't think of anything right now.
All right. Well, that means we've done a great interview, and I appreciate it, Ayalla, very much. You're brave, you're smart, you're strong. Thanks for being on the show with us tonight. I want to update everybody out there on a couple of things. The FBI has taken a look at this, as I've mentioned before. I know people are clamoring on YouTube and social media about wanting action taken. I've been down this road with many federal and local investigative agencies over 38 years of doing this, and it takes time. They have to read the files. They have to go over the cases. They have to review evidence. They have to interview victims. That all is going to take place, but it's going to take time. So while that occurs, and there's a lot of evidence out there, there's potential evidence for violation of federal child pornography laws, transmission of child pornography, of enticement. Those laws are written to be wide ranging in terms of their ability to be used, and there is every bit of a possibility for a prosecution there. So we're going to stay on top of that. Now, as for YouTube, I think I've mentioned before, I know I have, that I have reached out to YouTube to talk about this very topic and what YouTube is doing to keep the airwaves safe from predators, from grooming and enticement, and some of the things and the allegations that we've seen leveled against Gregory Jackson and Kai. And initially, I reached out to Susan Wojcicki, who is the CEO of YouTube, and to be honest with you, she got right back and said, let's try to figure out who the right person from our organization would be to talk to you. I then began dealing with somebody from their media relations department, and weeks have gone by now. And I had a conversation yesterday in which I was told basically, well, we don't comment on individual streamers. I sort of get that, because there are millions of streamers and they can't comment on each one. And in fact, there has not been a criminal charge filed against Gregory Jackson or Kai. And then I asked, well, can somebody just come on and talk about overall, how does YouTube monitor streamers for illegal predatory behavior, and what can be done to create a safe environment? Now, I get this is not an easy one-size-fits-all solution. I, more than virtually anybody in America, respect the First Amendment. People say stuff about me all the time. I've been a public figure for a long time. People take shots at me, at my family, all kinds of things. I get it. My skin is tough as a rhino. But when you've got vulnerable people who potentially have been victims of this guy and others, I don't understand for the life of me why somebody from YouTube doesn't come on this program. And I offered to fly out there with a camera crew and put the whole thing on tape. I understand it's being live is not for everybody and doesn't fit into everybody's corporate media strategy. But to be told that I'll review it with the team, we usually don't do interviews, and maybe I can refer you to some past statements on our policies about safety and preventing predatory behavior is absolutely unacceptable. It just isn't acceptable. And I'm going to keep pounding away at this until I get some answers. Now, I know they do media interviews. And I know if I did one, it would air here, obviously, but also very likely in a network television platform, because I do a lot of work there. I do more work there than I do here. And projects are coming up all the time. So given the fact that it is YouTube, why would you not come on this show on YouTube and talk about this? I'm a little, I just don't get it. One, it'd be a great opportunity for them to showcase what they're doing. And again, I get the First Amendment concerns. You know, I don't want to be monitored or stifled for what I do on this show, but I think we do our fair share of good here. And I think we've created an environment where people like you, Ayalla, and Billy, and Sarah, and Haley, and Shiloh, and Regina, and next week we'll have somebody else, and we'll keep on going until we achieve some sense of justice here. And once we do, we'll go on to the next topic, because I think we're doing something important. And I can't do it without you and the other young women coming on and talking about this. So that's what I have to say about all that. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Vincent, thank you as always. All the moderators who are out
Chris,
there.
I'd like to add something.
Go ahead, Vincent.
I learned Onision is false copyright striking videos that don't belong to him. Affected our good friend of the show, Repsion. Deity, Dramas and Opinions, and he's just claiming these videos that have nothing to do with his likeliness, and YouTube is in favor of these copyright claims, and all of these content creators' money is going right to Onision.
Well, that's an irony, Vincent. Thank you for bringing that up, and it's sad irony, really, because these people are doing honest work. And what Onision is doing is then claiming that he should get a piece of that revenue or all the revenue, which just doesn't make any sense to me. But we'll address that at a different time. Thank you, Vincent. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody out there. You've been watching Have a Seat with Chris Hansen, and we will be back next Wednesday at the same time. I'll see you soon. Thanks again.